All right, hello. Today we are doing actually two lessons. We're going to first start with 3-1, which is multiplication properties, which will sound very familiar. And we are also going to do 3-2, which is called using mental math to multiply. So go ahead and label the top of your paper with both of those. All right, the first definition and vocabulary word that I would like you to write down is the commutative property. And you've heard this when we are talking about the commutative property of addition, but this is the commutative property of multiplication, which is basically the same thing. So in addition, it says that 2 plus 4 is the same as 4 plus 2. They both equal 6. Okay, but in the commutative property, the order of factors, which that's a key word that we know we're multiplying, can be changed and the product remains the same. So just like 2 times 5 equals 10 and 5 times 2 equals 10. When I think of people commuting, I think of them moving or if they're in a car and driving around. So how I think of this property and how I remember it is that the 2 and the 5 kind of commute. They drive around to switch places. All right, the second one is the associative property. Now, the associative property, you will notice, has parentheses, but that is not the only thing that gives it away or makes it have its meaning. So please write down the definition that you can change the grouping of factors. The product will still stay the same. So if you notice, in these parentheses, I have a 2 and a 5, and in these parentheses, I have a 5 and a 3. But this property is telling me that this side should equal the same thing as this side. So when we solve it, we have to do what's in the parentheses first. So 2 times 5 is 10. And then we got to do the times 3 from the outside, which that would be 30. So this side equals 30. And then over here, we have to do what's inside the parentheses first. 5 times 3 is 15 times 2 equals 30. That is the associative property. The next property is the identity property of multiplication. So the identity property of multiplication is when you can multiply any number by 1 and the product is still that number. So anytime you see a 1 in a multiplication problem, you know right away it's the identity property. How I remember that is identity. The I could also look like a 1. So that's one way to remember it. And the last property is the zero property. And this property states that anytime you multiply a number by 0, the product or the answer is 0. So that is all that is. So you should have these 4 definitions written down along with the examples. All right, so these are going to be your 4 quick quiz questions before we move on to 3-2. And your first quiz question, I want you to type in, and you can abbreviate, so you can put commutative, you could put COMM, associative, identity, you could just put an I, and zero property Z. Make it easy on you. So this first one, 65 times 1 equals 65. What do you think that answer is? You should have put, caught myself at least, identity. All right, 45 times 6, and then equals 6 times 45. What property is that? There's the commutative. Next one, 33 times 0 equals 0. Well, that's the zero property for sure. It has a 0 in there. And then 11 times 9 equals 9 times 11. Remember, they're commuting. They're driving over to one another's house to say hi, and that would be the commutative. All right, we are moving on to 3-2. So for 3-2, we need to write down kind of 3 definitions. The words that we are going to learn about are factors, product, and multiple. So I want you to write all of this down, and my bold words, the big words, I would like you to underline for sure. So factors are numbers that are multiplied, and you get a product. Well, the product is the answer, same thing. So I'm going to write answer over here. A multiple of a given number, a multiple is, so a multiple of a number is a product of a given number and another whole number. So once you have that written down, I'm going to show you what I mean when I'm talking about these three words. So 30 is a multiple of 10, and 30 is a multiple of 3. So all that is saying is that your factors are the two numbers that you are timesing together, two or more numbers, and the product is your answer. And multiple means that 3 can go into 30, so 30 is a multiple of 3, and 10 can go into 30. Both numbers can go into it. So when we multiply, we'll use the properties, those 4 properties that you just learned. We'll use properties that you know and patterns. So if you know your multiplication facts, you know that 3 times 7 is 21. So I'm going to use my knowledge, what I already know, in order to fill out this one and this one without having to write it down, do 300 times 7, blah, blah, blah. So I noticed that this number 30 times 7 is just like 3 times 7, except it's adding a 0. So all that tells me to do is write my answer and add 1 0. Then we have 300, which has 2 zeros, times 7. That's telling me to write my answer of 21 plus my 2 zeros. So it's just kind of like a pattern. So now if I have 3,000 times 7, I won't even have to write it out. I know that 7 times 3 is 21, and then I add the 3 zeros behind. So I have 21,000. That is how you can do mental math to multiply and do it very quickly. So this is going to be our quiz question. 4 times 8 equals what? Your answer should have been 32. And then 40 times 8 is what? Well, we know it's 32 because we do the 4 times 8, but we just add the 0. So you should have gotten 320. And then the last one, 400 times 8. Remember to follow the pattern. And we get 32 with 1, 2 zeros. Do not forget the comma. Comma is our placeholder. So I don't want you to write this one, but I just want you to watch and listen to my reasoning. So if I have these 3 numbers, how is it easy to do mental math? So in my head, I think, what is easiest? Well, I think that 50 times 2 is easy because that gives me 100. So I still have this 32 to work with. I'm done with the 50 and I'm done with the 2. So now I have 100 times 32. Well, we just learned that they follow patterns, that numbers follow patterns. So 1 times 32 is 32, and I add 2 zeros. See how quick I did that? That's what you are going to be doing. All right, now try to do this quiz problem without writing it down. I can't tell if you are actually trying to do it mentally or not, but I would like you to at least try. So in your quiz question, put the answer. If you need to write it all the way out, you can, but try to do it mentally. So I can know that 6 times 9 gives me our 54. And then let's see how many zeros I have in all. 1, 2, 3. That means I have to add 3 zeros onto the back to get 54,000. All right, the first one I want you to try to also do mentally on this page is 120 times 30. All right, so how I would do this quickly is I would say that 12 times 3 is 36, and I have to count my zeros. I have 1 0, 2 zeros, so 1, 2. Put in my comma, and my answer is 3,600. Now down here, try to do this one mentally. And when I figure it out, I say that 5 times 6 gives me 30. And then I have 1, 2 zeros to add. The 0 that was already there in the 30, that does not count when we add the zeros on the back. I got the 2 zeros at the back from these 2 in the problem one. All right, we will try more of those in class tomorrow so I can actually see that you're using mental math. And I will talk to you then. Goodbye.